Mikhail gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to stay calm, though his heart was beating like a drum in his chest. He was full of happy anticipation. The evening promised to be special. Leaving the office, he smiled to himself. Tonight, he would finally get to spend the night at home. Lately, Mikhail had been working long hours, including night shifts, because his company dealt with foreign partners and time zones often didn't line up. He hadn't told his wife he was coming home early. He wanted to surprise her. On his way, he stopped to buy a bouquet of her favorite lilies and a bottle of good wine. The road passed quickly. He imagined walking through the door, hugging his beloved Olga, and spending a cozy evening together. Both he and Olga earned well and were building a comfortable future. That's why every chance to simply be together felt like a blessing. When Mikhail finally pulled up to their country house, his joy suddenly dimmed. Olga's car wasn't in the driveway. She probably went into the city on business, he thought, trying not to worry. Her job often required meeting clients late into the evening. She's probably just delayed. But when he stepped inside, a heavy sense of loneliness pressed on him. The empty house felt unusually cold. He dialed Olga's number and waited, holding his breath. A few seconds later, she answered. Her voice sounded distant, cold. "Hi," she said flatly. "Olga, where are you?" "I finished work early," Mikhail said cheerfully. There was a long pause. "I'm not coming home tonight." He froze. "What do you mean? Are you saying you're not sleeping at home?" "Do I need to repeat myself? You didn't get it the first time?" she snapped, her tone sharp and irritated, something he'd never heard from her before. His chest tightened painfully. "Olga, what's going on? Why aren't you coming back?" "I have urgent work to do," she said coldly. "Just don't bother me, okay? I'll be home tomorrow." Her tone was so harsh, so dismissive, that Mikhail barely held back his anger. "Olga, why are you talking to me like that?" His voice rose, trembling with disappointment and hurt. "We'll talk about this when you come home." But he only heard the dial tone. She had hung up. Standing in the empty house, phone still in hand, Mikhail listened to the silence growing thicker and darker around him. The next morning, he sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped tightly around a cup of cold coffee. He hadn't slept a minute, replaying their conversation over and over in his head. Suddenly, he saw her car pull up through the window. Olga got out calmly, shut the door, and entered the house as if nothing had happened. Seeing Mikhail in the kitchen, she simply said, "Morning," and without waiting for a reply, added that she wanted to take a bath. She walked straight to the bathroom, leaving him standing there, fuming. He watched her go, barely believing his eyes. She didn't even try to explain. Her composure and indifference stirred a painful mix of anger and resentment in him. Unable to sit still, Mikhail grabbed his keys and went outside. Sitting in Olga's car, he noticed her tablet on the dashboard. Without thinking, he turned it on and opened the navigation history. There it was, the address where she had spent the night. His eyes narrowed, and his fingers tightened around the steering wheel. A storm was rising inside him, a mixture of pain and fury. He opened the glove compartment and froze. Among the random clutter lay an open pack of condoms, with one missing. That was enough. A wave of bitterness and betrayal washed over him. He and Olga hadn't used contraception in years. There was no need to. The fact spoke for itself. Today, he would get answers. 25 minutes later, Olga came out of the bathroom wrapped in a silk robe, towel drying her hair, a relaxed smile on her face, as if nothing had happened. Her calmness only fueled his rage. He waited silently until she sat down across from him. When she finally met his eyes, a flicker of irritation crossed her face, just for a moment. "Do you have nothing to say? Where were you last night?" His voice was cold and taut like a wire. Olga rolled her eyes slightly and sighed in annoyance. "Mikhail, I already told you, it was work-related. There's nothing to discuss." But he was ready for that. He tossed the pack of condoms onto the table between them. "This is work-related too? I checked your GPS," he said with a bitter smirk. "Whose house were you at all night?" The air thickened between them. Finally, Olga sighed again and shot him a dark look. "What the hell were you doing snooping through my car and my things?" "You're being ridiculous, Mikhail." His anger flared. "I had to go through my wife's things because my wife is acting like a stranger," he shot back, his voice breaking with fury. "Or, to be more precise, because my wife is cheating on me and trying to make me look like a fool." Olga's eyes flashed with defiance. "That wasn't cheating," she said sharply. Mikhail almost laughed at the absurdity. Oh, really? You spent the night at another man's house, and that's not cheating? His voice rose. What were you two doing then? Watching cartoons. And the condoms, what were they for? Filling them with water and throwing them off the balcony. Olga stood up, her face twisted with anger. For a moment, she couldn't find the words, then burst out. It wasn't cheating, it was gratitude. I thanked Igor, and that was the first and last time I had to do it. Mikhail froze, staring at her, stunned. Gratitude, he repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief and sarcasm. Olga sank back into her chair, exhausted. Avoiding his gaze, she began to speak softly, almost whispering. I had serious problems at work. I made some mistakes, ones that could have cost me my job. I put so much effort into that position. I wanted to move up. It's a good company, the pay is high. We had plans, Mikhail. I wanted to hold on to it, for us. She took a deep breath and continued, voice trembling slightly. Igor spoke to management on my behalf. He wasn't after money. Her eyes fell to the floor. He just liked me. He tactfully hinted that he expected gratitude. She fell silent for a moment, looked at him, and, squinting slightly, added, I gave him what he wanted. It was only one night, and I got no pleasure from it. I love you, Mikhail. Please, let's just forget it. Mikhail looked at her, feeling his blood pounding in his temples. Forget? She simply suggested forgetting what had happened, as if it could be erased with a single motion. As if that night, her gratitude, was nothing more than a mistake, a random accident. Olga glanced at the table and noticed the bouquet of flowers and the bottle of wine he had bought yesterday, hoping to spend a warm, cozy evening together. She must have sensed his mood. Without another word, she opened the bottle, poured the wine into 2 glasses, and handed one to Mikhail. Mikhail, I really do love you, she said more softly, trying to add warmth to her voice. Yes, I did something wrong. But sometimes in life, you have to go beyond boundaries to achieve greater success. She raised her glass as if proposing a toast to their relationship, to erasing all their problems. Mikhail sat motionless. He tried to catch even a shadow of sincerity on her face, but her words already seemed empty and distant. He forced you, didn't he? Mikhail asked, already knowing the answer. She didn't even flinch, as if expecting the question. No, Mikhail, it was my decision, she replied. He only hinted that he'd like a return favor. You have to understand, I needed his loyalty. Yes, it's wrong, but that's how the circumstances turned out. Let's start over, from a clean slate. I promise you, it will never happen again. Mikhail nodded, feeling a bitter weariness. Forget it. A mistake. It won't happen again. I understand you, Olga, he said slowly, forcing down the lump of bitterness rising in his throat. Taking a sip of wine, he stood up and left the house. The air outside hit him with a cool gust. He inhaled deeply, feeling rage pulse inside. His thoughts were chaotic, but one thing became clear. He couldn't just let this go. Mikhail had always prided himself on his self-respect and principles, and the thought that he had been made a fool of drove him mad. His gaze turned cold, focused. He thought about divorce, but the idea seemed too simple, too easy. No, Olga and her loyal friend Igor had to understand the price of their actions. They had to feel the pain they had inflicted on him. They had to pay for their betrayal. A few minutes later, Mikhail returned home, trying to look calm and composed. He decided to play his role, the forgiving husband who wanted to move on. You know, Olga, he said, pretending to have thought over her words. I'll try to forget it, as if it never happened. It's not worth destroying our relationship. Let's just pretend nothing happened. Her face brightened instantly. She smiled gratefully. Thank you, Mikhail. I knew you'd understand, she said softly. You've always been smart and kind. Mikhail nodded, pretending to accept her words. Inside, the storm still raged, but on the surface he remained calm. She didn't suspect that her understanding husband was already planning a lesson she and Igor would never forget. On Monday morning, Mikhail drove to work. On the way, he recalled that day when Olga confessed her gratitude to Igor and remembered that her company had strict rules about romantic relationships between employees. Such violations usually led to immediate dismissal. He knew that direct confrontation without proof could backfire, so he decided to act more subtly, to build himself some cover. He met with his boss, Yuri Vitalievich, and asked to be sent on a business trip. The boss was surprised. Mikhail was a valuable specialist, usually involved in high-level negotiations with foreign partners. What's this sudden urge, Mikhail? The boss raised his eyebrows. With a calm smile, Mikhail explained that he was tired of the tight schedule and needed a change of scenery. Well, a short reset won't hurt, concluded Yuri Vitalievich, agreeing to prepare the documents. When Mikhail told Olga about the trip, her reaction was calm, even indifferent. She wished him luck, thanked him for letting her know, and went to her room. His absence wouldn't raise suspicion. That was the first stage of his plan. The next day, Mikhail searched online for small acting studios that hired performers for various public events. He met with the head of one studio and presented his idea. He wanted a few young actors to play the roles of random strangers who would happen to be near Olga. The team found the idea intriguing, a clever psychological performance that wouldn't raise direct suspicion. Together, they worked through every detail until the plan was ready. Olga had no idea what awaited her. Mikhail could already see her confident smile fading into fear and panic. The next morning, Mikhail left for his business trip. Olga, as usual, stopped by her favorite cafe near the office for coffee and a croissant. The smell of fresh pastries filled the air. The familiar atmosphere comforted her. Just as she reached for her coffee, a young man in a business suit approached her. He looked at her closely, as if recognizing her, and smiled faintly. "Oh, it's you," he exclaimed with a feigned enthusiasm. "I remember you. The woman who thanks her colleagues in such a creative way. So generous of you." Olga froze. His words struck her like thunder. "I'm sorry," she stammered, completely lost. The man chuckled, his face shifting into something unsettlingly amused. "How noble of you, really. Not everyone is so selfless with coworkers," he said and walked away, leaving her in shock. She stood there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Maybe it was some absurd mistake. Shaking it off, she grabbed her coffee and hurried out of the cafe. The next day, despite her attempts to forget it, Olga returned to the same cafe, convincing herself it was nothing. People say strange things sometimes. It doesn't mean anything, she thought. But as soon as she made her order, another man, also in a business suit, noticed her, widened his eyes, and smiled broadly. "Oh, madam," he exclaimed. "I've heard of your generosity. Sharing yourself for career success. What a noble act of sacrifice." Olga went pale. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The man waved dismissively. "Don't be modest. People like you earn fame quickly, always ready to help colleagues." Touching, really. He smiled one last time and walked away. Her hands trembled as she picked up her coffee. This couldn't be a coincidence. Panic began to rise in her chest. By midweek, her nerves were frayed. She tried to tell herself it was all a misunderstanding. But the next morning, a young woman passing by smiled and said, "Oh, you're Olga. Everyone in your office talks about how generous you are, especially with male colleagues. Thank you for your kindness." Olga gasped, grabbed her coffee, and rushed out. Her thoughts were a mess. This wasn't coincidence anymore. Someone had clearly spread her secret, and it was spreading fast. Shaking, she dialed Mikhail's number. The ringing felt endless until he finally picked up. "Yes, I'm listening." His voice sounded slightly tense, which only confused her more. "Mikhail," she began uncertainly, I don't know how to explain this, but something strange is happening. People are saying things about me, things they shouldn't know." There was a pause on the line. Then Mikhail spoke, sounding annoyed. "I don't understand what you're implying." Olga hesitated. "I just wanted to ask, you didn't tell anyone about what happened between us that night, did you? Because I can't explain what's going on otherwise." His tone turned sharper. "Didn't we agree to forget about it and move on? You're the one who said so. Why are you bringing this up now? Maybe you're just imagining things." Olga felt even worse, as if she were the one to blame for the nightmare her life had become. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mikhail knew more than he was letting on. She hesitated, unsure how to explain how she felt. And at that moment, he suddenly interrupted her. "You know what, Olga? I'm at work right now. I'm busy at the production line, by the way. Don't bother me with nonsense." The next moment, he turned on the video call, letting her see his face. Behind him, the factory floor buzzed with machinery, workers moving back and forth. "See? I'm here working, and you're distracting me with your silly worries and reminding me of what you did," he added, emphasizing every word. Olga's heart shrank with shame. She sighed and mumbled, "I'm sorry, Mikhail. I guess I'm just too nervous." Then calmed down. He cut her off shortly and ended the call, leaving her completely confused. After the conversation, Olga's thoughts turned toward Igor. Maybe he had told someone about that night? What if he had blabbed about their secret behind her back? She couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling and finally decided to confront him directly. Waiting until the office began to empty, Olga quietly entered Igor's office so no one would see her. She closed the door, walked up to his desk, and whispered, leaning closer, "Igor, did you tell anyone about us?" Her voice trembled with panic. "Are you insane?" he hissed, glancing quickly toward the door as if afraid someone might overhear. "Why would you even ask that? I didn't tell anyone. If this gets out, we'll both get fired." Olga felt a brief relief mixed with irritation. She kept her eyes on him, suspicious. "Something's not right," she murmured, as if trying to convince herself she wasn't imagining things. "Get out of my office before someone notices," he said sharply, rubbing his temples, visibly nervous. "And please, take something to calm yourself down. You're not well, you're paranoid." Olga stood there, uncertain and embarrassed, even more confused than before. Returning to her desk, she caught herself thinking she might actually be losing her mind, that maybe she just needed rest. "It's just stress," she repeated over and over, trying to pull herself together. By Thursday, she decided not to go out for coffee, choosing to spend the entire day in the office and avoid any chance encounters. To her surprise, she began to feel calmer. "Everything's fine," she kept telling herself, exhaling tension. It even seemed like life was returning to normal. When the workday ended, Olga left the office feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in days. She walked slowly toward the parking lot, relieved that this strange nightmare seemed to be fading, when suddenly she bumped into a young man on a scooter. The impact scattered the papers in her hands all over the pavement. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Olga exclaimed, kneeling to pick them up. The young man stopped, smiled, and without hesitation began helping her collect the papers. "Thank you," she murmured, keeping her eyes down. "It was my fault. I wasn't paying attention." He handed the papers back to her, smiling with a sly expression. "No harm done," he said lightly. "Sometimes what's hidden comes to light, right? Oh, and by the way, I've heard about your gratitude." Olga's vision went dark with anger. She could barely breathe. "You," she shouted, grabbing a folder and throwing it at him. The guy laughed, dodged easily, and sped off on his scooter, leaving her standing there in fury and despair. Barely keeping herself together, Olga rushed to her car and drove home. The whole evening her nerves were raw. She kept glancing at her phone as if expecting another cruel surprise. Her mind raced with questions. Finally, unable to take it anymore, she opened her laptop and started searching for a psychotherapist. She couldn't understand what was happening to her, but one thing was certain: she couldn't handle it alone anymore. On Friday morning, Olga arrived at work feeling the tension gnawing at her from the inside. The night before, she had felt she was on the verge of a breakdown. The only thing keeping her going now was the thought of the weekend. She had even booked an appointment with a psychologist. The earliest available one was next week. Silently praying, Olga hoped this day would finally pass without incident. The morning really did start peacefully. Work completely absorbed her, and even the anxious thoughts that had haunted her for days seemed to fade into the background. Olga began to think that perhaps she had already lived through the worst of it, and that all this would slowly become a thing of the past. But closer to noon, her calm was shattered by a new shock. A courier entered the office carrying a massive bouquet of crimson roses, their rich scent filling the air. Olga felt every colleague's gaze turn toward him, and then toward her, when the courier confidently called out across the room, "Delivery for Olga M." Everyone stared at her, waiting for her reaction. Olga froze, her insides boiling with a mix of anger and panic. She jumped up from her chair, trying to keep her irritation in check. "Why do you think this is for me? I didn't order anything, and I'm not expecting anyone." By that time, several curious coworkers had already gathered around. The courier, clearly enjoying the attention, added loudly, "It says right here, 'To the most magnificent and sexy woman, Olga M., from Igor.'" For a second, the office fell silent. Then came the quiet chuckles and whispering. People started exchanging amused glances. Olga lost control, bursting into a shout, She unleashed a storm of curses at the courier. Startled, he stumbled backward toward the exit, trying to avoid provoking her further. Hearing the commotion, Vasily Ivanovich, the director, known for his strict discipline and firm hand, quickly appeared. His stern gaze fixed on Olga. He bent down, picked up the card, and read it. His face twitched slightly, but then he gave a restrained smile and addressed the employees. "Well, what's this? A little incident? Someone decided to make a bad joke." He turned back to Olga, trying to calm her down. "Olga, relax. You probably just need some rest," he said firmly, in a tone that didn't allow for argument. Then, to defuse the tension, he tried a clumsy joke. "All right, everyone, back to work. Don't crowd here. And you, Olga, don't worry. Someone just decided to tease you, that's all. To make sure there's no misunderstanding, you'll take a lie detector test with Igor." The employees chuckled and began dispersing, amused by his attempt at humor. But Olga was trembling. Fear and rage overwhelmed her. Vasily Ivanovich, of course, wasn't serious about the test. He didn't actually suspect an affair. But her nerves finally snapped. "Go to hell, all of you," she screamed. "Yes, I'm sleeping with Igor. The sex is amazing. You're all miserable, gray rats, trembling from fear, cowards. And I don't care what you think." Her voice shook, but her eyes burned. The entire office froze. People stared at her in horror and confusion. Vasily Ivanovich turned pale, sat down heavily in a nearby chair, and wiped sweat from his forehead, stunned by what he'd just heard. Ironically, Igor wasn't even there. He had left earlier to sign an important contract. If he had been present, maybe Olga would have held herself together. But now, alone and surrounded by shocked colleagues, she couldn't bear it anymore. Realizing she had nothing left to lose, she grabbed her bag and rushed to the door. At that exact moment, Igor walked into the office, cheerful after closing his deal. He stopped, startled, as Olga ran straight toward him. She grabbed his hand and shouted, Tell everyone we're lovers. Let them know the truth. We're not like them. Igor, we're above this. We're not afraid to show real feelings." Igor froze as if struck by lightning. Confusion flashed across his face. Pulling his hand free, he looked around nervously at the silent office. "Olga, why did you tell them?" he muttered. Those few words, spoken in absolute silence, confirmed everything she had already screamed. The room filled with shocked stares. Unable to stand it any longer, Olga burst into tears and ran out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Igor stood there, devastated, running his hand through his hair in despair. Behind him, the whispers began again. Their secret affair was now public knowledge. When Michael returned from his business trip, Olga confronted him immediately. She suspected he had orchestrated everything. But Michael just laughed. Then Olga snapped. She grabbed a knife and began threatening him. He managed to knock the knife out of her hand. Enraged, Olga hurled a chair at the window, shattering the glass, as if trying to release the chaos inside her. When the police and ambulance arrived, she collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She looked completely broken. Michael calmly explained to the officers that his wife had been drinking and suffered a nervous breakdown. He hinted that she might be experiencing delirium tremens from prolonged stress and alcohol. He didn't mention the real reason for the outburst. Olga spent nearly a week in the hospital receiving treatment and therapy. Gradually, she began to recover. By the time she was discharged, she felt ready to start rebuilding her life. But reality greeted her with cold indifference. When she returned home, she found that Michael's belongings were gone. So was he. Their once shared home now felt empty. Heart pounding, she grabbed her phone and called him. "Michael, what's going on? Why are your things gone? You just left without saying anything." His voice was calm, cold, even. "Olga," he said, pausing deliberately, "I just can't live with a woman who lost her mind over her own infidelity." Those words enraged her, but before she could answer, he added, "Let's not turn this into a drama. I'll see you in court. I've already filed the divorce papers. By the way, I've put the house up for sale. I suggest we split the money 80/20ths, 80 for me, 20 for you. That's fair." Olga was furious. She wasn't about to let him take what they had built together. "If you're serious about this divorce," she snapped, "don't expect to get 80%. The best you can hope for is half. Or maybe nothing at all after everything you've done. I have every right to demand the larger share." "Michael, clearly anticipating this reaction, chuckled softly. "Olga," he said, his voice edged with sarcasm. "First of all, I didn't do anything. You brought this on yourself. Second, remember when you decided to play dangerous games with that knife? There are cameras in the house, in case you forgot. Everything is recorded." His tone turned icy. "So now, I have all the grounds I need for a divorce on my terms. Don't like my offer? Fine. I'll file a report for attempted assault. Or I can give you some time to think." Olga's protests and fury meant nothing now. It was clear Michael had trapped her, and there was no way out. Later, she begged him for forgiveness, tried to negotiate a fairer settlement. But Michael remained unmoved. In the following months, the divorce proceeded quietly. Olga received her 20% share and reluctantly accepted it. During all this time, Michael remained calm and detached. Because of the scandal at work, both Olga and Igor lost their positions. The company, proud of its reputation, principles, and strict code of ethics, couldn't ignore what had happened. Without hesitation, and without hiding its outrage, it severed all ties with them. Their careers were destroyed. Any attempts to restore their reputations proved futile. Their names were now forever associated with humiliation and failure. Michael had achieved exactly what he wanted. He punished Olga and her lover Igor in the harshest possible way, turning her own betrayal into the source of her downfall. And yet, deep inside, there was an emptiness that vengeance couldn't fill. The years that had passed, the memories of their former happiness, none of it had truly disappeared. It all left behind a faint shadow of regret in his heart. Though his mind coldly insisted that justice had been served, a part of his soul still longed for the love they once shared.